Then, with a threatening shock, the ship struck, wedging itself between two high rocks several miles off the coast. Upon hearing the captain's orders to "lower away the boat," I left my family and went out onto the deck. It was to my horror that I witnessed the last of the crew scramble onto the one remaining lifeboat and push off. I cried out to them, but to no avail, and my family and I were left alone. Enduring a precarious night in our cabin, we prepared to escape the following morning when the waters were somewhat calmer. It was my clever son Jack who suggested using tubs from the ship to construct a makeshift raft. With all the supplies and livestock we could procure, we launched ourselves at sunrise, and were comically tugged to shore by a giant sea turtle my son Ernest had ingeniously lassoed. Once on land, we set up camp. I then set out to explore the island with my eldest son Fritz, while my wife and younger sons remained to care for the livestock. Sadly, we found no trace of the others who had shipwrecked, although we discovered many things that would ensure our survival on this island. Fritz and I returned laden with exotic fruits, sugarcane, and calabash gourds, the hard rind of which could be used for bowls, spoons, and bottles. Fresh coconuts were obtained by tossing dry, over-ripened coconuts, which had fallen to the ground, up to the monkeys hanging in the branches. The monkeys, mimicking our behavior, had responded by plucking the fresh ones from the trees and tossing them back at us. My wife anticipated we would remain residents on this island for quite some time. Determined and optimistic, she gathered our young sons, Ernest, Jack, and Franz, and ventured forth to find a more suitable place in which to build a home. She discovered a lovely shaded grove where the most extraordinary trees grew. Ernest asked me what kind of trees these might be. I had seen pictures of such trees, and observed their massive trunks and open-air roots to be those of the giant fig-bearing mangrove tree of the Antilles. The sturdy tree branches inspired us to build a tree house, where we could avoid flooding and be kept safe from predators. The huge undertaking began with a strong cord from a bag of sewing supplies my wife had procured from the ship. I fastened this cord to an arrow I had constructed of reeds and feathers, and shot the arrow from a bow of bamboo, which carried the cord over the branch and landed at our feet. A rope ladder was then constructed and pulled over the main branch via the cord. Once fastened, my nimble son Jack was the first to climb the ladder and haul up some of the materials we needed, using the cord and a pulley. The land provided all the raw materials we needed for the construction of the house and for the crude weaponry with which to fortify her. We were occupied on land for several months, harvesting grains, planting fruit trees, and building roads which would be used for easy transport of materials. Such work had built up my sons' strength considerably, yet it had also taken its toll on their limited supply of clothing. It was at this time that I decided to pay one last visit to the wreck. Once on board, I sent my boys to rummage through her for anything that might be of value to us. They returned with bales of cloth, linen, tables, benches, bolts, and locks. Loading up the raft, we came to shore, planning to blow up the remainder of the wreck with gunpowder so that we might gain easy access to the wood of her frame. At sunset, we assembled on the beach and watched the remains of the brave vessel that carried us from Switzerland be reduced to just the planks of her hull, drifting in the calm toward the shore. The rainy season in the treehouse had brought much discomfort. The structure had sustained some damage by the winds. Our quarters were damp and our provisions soaked. Fritz proposed that we hollow out some rocks for more secure storage of our supplies, and with the onset of spring we set out to do just that. For 6 days we toiled with chisels, hammers, and spades, barely making a dent in the hard rock, yet we carried on. Then on the 10th day the rock softened, then gave way altogether to reveal an enormous cavern glittering with salt crystals. Upon investigation, it was decided that this cavern would make a more suitable home in which to spend our future winters. Uneventful winter days made the boys restless. Come spring, an expedition to secure the family farm at the woodlands was proposed. My 3 oldest boys made the journey, only to discover a couple of lambs slaughtered by a hyena, the cottage ransacked by apes, and the surrounding sugarcane fields trampled by a herd of elephants. Receiving a message for help via pigeon post, I promptly set out to meet the boys with my wife and youngest son Franz. We set up camp, and with everyone's cooperation, erected a stronger barricade in 1 month's time. The plundering of the woodlands induced us to colonize the nearby islands surrounding our bay with livestock we wished to be kept safe from predators. It was also suggested that a watchtower be constructed along the shore of one of the more strategically placed islands, which we named Shark Island. We mounted a gun and erected a flagstaff to warn of approaching danger from the seas. Our tiny island colonies, stocked with game and scattered with seed, had become our home away from home. With the onset of the rainy season, frequent visits were made to the island to harvest not only our flourishing domestic crops, but vegetation unique to the island's rocky shores. On occasion, my wife would present us with the most marvelous jellies for our bread, which she had produced by boiling various types of seaweed with sugar, citron, and orange juice. The land had provided sustenance, not only in terms of foodstuffs, but in terms of spiritual strength, and for this we were truly grateful. On the eve which marked the 1-year anniversary of our shipwreck, we gave thanks for our many blessings. The following day was proclaimed a national holiday, and celebrated with an island sports carnival. At the ceremony, each member of my family was honored for their unique contribution to our health and well-being during our stay on the island. We celebrated that day with zest for the next 10 years. I watched my 4 sons grow to manhood as strong, honest men, and was grateful for the challenge that life on the island had posed. With full confidence in their abilities, I learned to let go and gave my sons the freedom to come and go as they pleased, to explore the outer reaches of the island. My eldest son, Fritz, took advantage of this opportunity. He would disappear, sometimes for days, in a canoe we had constructed together of whalebone and sealskin. It was during one of these excursions that Fritz encountered something that would change our lives. While making a pass through the channel which led to a beautiful inland bay, he was attacked by seafowl. Wielding a boathook, he struck a seabird, detaching a piece of parchment which had been fastened to the bird's leg. It was a cry for help, written by an Englishwoman. It was Fritz's passion from that day forward to find this woman. I encouraged this quest and our son's hope. On the following day, after much preparation, we bade him goodbye. Fritz made his way through unfamiliar regions with faith and fortitude, and his gallant efforts were rewarded when, rounding the curve of the shore, he spotted the silhouette of a slight figure walking along the rocky reef to secure her beacon. She knelt to stoke the fire, and a column of smoke curled and rose to the sky from the burning rocks. "5 days had passed before we had the pleasure of meeting the mysterious stranger. She was introduced to us as Miss Jenny Montrose, the daughter of a British officer who had been stationed in India. She was raised there by her father, having lost her mother at the age of 3. She was his joy. Upon receiving orders to return to his regiment, Jenny's father secured her passage aboard the Dorcas, bound for England. He returned aboard another vessel with his troops. The week following the departure from Calcutta, a fierce storm ensued and the Dorcas was lost. Jenny alone survived. Her years alone on these desolate shores had been difficult, yet she endured as we had, through strength and spirit. The winter months passed so quickly in the lively company of Miss Montrose that spring took us quite by surprise. We set off to repair the damage that our property suffered during the rainy season. My youngest boys, Jack and Franz, were given the responsibility of securing the watchtower at Shark Island. It was at this time that we received the mysterious gunfire that set us all a-tremble. Having just finished cleaning the gun, the boys wished to test their accuracy and fired upon a barrel they had placed out in the bay. Moments later, 3 shots responded from a westerly direction. Naturally, we were all quite anxious to discover the source of the gunfire, but caution guided me and we returned home. I slept that night amid dreams of the civilized world, while I imagined my bold and inventive young sons dreamed of battling Malay pirates under a fiery sky. The following morning, Fritz and I prepared the canoe and set out on a reconnaissance. Rounding the bluff at the entrance of Safety Bay, we sighted a vessel displaying the British colors. It was with great joy that we returned home to the family with the news. That evening there was a great celebration at our home. The captain, satisfied with our story of how we came to inhabit this island, explained to us his own reasons for venturing into these parts. It was a search for Miss Montrose, at the request of her father, who never gave up hope that she might still be alive. It was an emotional evening as my sons considered whether or not they would remain on the island or return to the civilized world. Fritz, who admitted his love for Jenny, chose to return, as did our youngest boy, Franz. My wife and I would remain on the island with our sons Ernest and Jack, and others who wished to build the colony that would be New Switzerland. That evening, with great pride, I bestowed upon Fritz the journal in which I had chronicled the lives of our brave and united family. It was my wish that this journal be printed so that children all over the world may be inspired by what could be accomplished through knowledge and through faith in oneself.